Alav Shalom. And one of the things he wanted to do was to visit Jewish soldiers. And by the way, in case you wonder about the title, S.O.S, Send Over Salamis, we had campaigns all over America to have salamis sent over. And when I went to the field, I carried 2 bags, Siddurim and Salamis. And I often said I wondered which was more meaningful to the soldiers. One nourished the body and one nourished the soul. But in any case, Resnick wanted to visit Jewish soldiers. I got a telegram from the Secretary of Defense, McNamara, who said, provide refrigeration for Resnick because he's shipping over 300 kosher salamis. I called supply. They said, we have 1 refrigerator left, and it's meant for a general's quarters. I said, well, you make the decision as to whether the general's quarters are more important than the Secretary of State's quarters. I said, we'll take it for the duration of Resnick's visit. By the way, once you get something, you don't let it go. So we had a refrigerator specifically for salamis from then on, and organizations all over America were sending us salamis. So that's the origin of the title. Now, just kind of to tell you how this came about or how I wrote the book, the procedure that I used to write the book. When I finally decided to do it, I sat down with a legal pad that I have here, and I started jotting down chronologically by assignment things that I remembered about those assignments that began in 1960. Major things that I remembered, humorous things that I remembered, pathetic things that I remembered. And then I went to my files, which I had organized chronologically, and filled in those items that I thought I missed, and filled in some documentation on items that I actually, had put down. It's amazing how much I remembered. And so when I actually sat down to write, I had a blueprint to set it down in order. My biggest problem was cutting it down in size. It probably can be cut down some more, but I originally ended up with well over 500 pages. This only ended up at about 373 pages. But it was an amazing experience. And I'm going to finish with maybe one story that some of you probably have heard. On Yom Kippur, while I was davening for the Amud, somebody handed me a note that said that a Jewish soldier who was a medic who had opted not to take the time off for Yom Kippur because he felt his job as a medic in saving lives. And I can't say that he was a religious person in a ceremonial way. I knew this soldier from visiting his field location every other week, and he would come to whatever programs we had. But he felt that pikuach nefesh was a very important thing. And in the process of trying to save some soldiers that had stumbled on a minefield, himself triggered a mine, and the message read, he's lost both of his legs, in critical condition, visit him as quickly as possible. Now, I was a fairly young chaplain in 1966 or 67, and so as soon as Yom Kippur was over, I arranged for a helicopter to take me to his field hospital, which was about 15 miles away, and it was not safe to go there by ground unless you were going in convoy. And frankly, I didn't know what I would say to this man. I didn't know what I'd find. I had very little experience with this kind of serious trauma. And I walked into his ward, and this was kind of a corrugated building with absolute trauma. And he was diagonally across, you know how you see it in the movies, there probably were 10 beds on either side, bunks or whatever you call them, cots on either side of this corrugated building. And when he saw me, he happened to have been conscious, he smiled, and I went cold and I got goosebumps. And if you saw me now, every time I tell this story, I get the same goosebumps because I really feel it. I couldn't understand what he was smiling about. And I learned why he was smiling, because I represented something to him, be it a taste of home, a little bit of hope, Judaism certainly. And as I started a conversation with him, at a time when the doctors told me they didn't know whether he would survive or not, he described what he felt. He said, I know I've lost both of my legs, but I feel my legs and I feel my feet, known as phantom feelings. And he said to me, you know, I'm going to walk again. And the doctor said to me, he may not make it. Well, he did make it. And I found out when he was evacuated to the States that eventually they fitted him with prosthesis, and he indeed walked again. Now, to sum up a career of 21 years of active duty and an additional 5 or 6 years in the reserves, was it worthwhile? How does one measure success? How much Yiddishkeit did I bring to soldiers? Well, I don't know. Because unlike shuls where you have stability, you move every year or 2 or 3 and they move. So it's hard to keep track of people. But every now and then I run into somebody and I get a little bit of feedback. Even all these years later, some of you have probably heard me mention a number of years ago, I got a call from a soldier whose mother, Aleha Shalom, was a patient of Ari's. He heard the name Greenspan, and he asked if his father was a chaplain. And this was a person who lives in Mechola, in the Jordan Valley. He says, you probably don't remember me. My name was Elmer Cotton. I said, of course I remember you. You were a soldier at Fort Dix in 1967. 3,000 soldiers there. He says, how could you remember me? I said, because I never met a Jew who's named Elmer. Now it's Menachem Cotton. He's a mashgiach. He wasn't a frum boy then. And he said to me, you know, you set me on the road to Yiddishkeit. He says, you used to give sermons of 3 to 5 minutes with a single message, and I can tell you what you said. I don't remember what I said, but he remembered. I took his name and his number, all excited. I said, I'll be in touch with you. I took it down wrong. In the interim, his mother died. Ari didn't know who I was talking about, and I felt so terrible. A year or so went by. We got invited to a wedding that we were not really going to go to, somebody that was more casual than a friend. And when we finally called to say we were going to come, I said to Gayla, kind of the last minute, week or so before, why don't we go? Very nice people. When I called, the mother of the bride said, I'm so happy because there's somebody who's going to be at the wedding who was on the Merkaz Klita with us, who just cannot wait to meet you. And Menachem was there. And we since have gotten together many times. Just one final thing, and this is really part of a letter from a fellow that I had lost touch with, who was another one of my soldiers in 1967, who was a Dati soldier. And I write this in response in the epilogue to Would I Do It Again? A letter I received just after retiring might provide the answer. This letter should serve as a reminder of a voice from the past. We first crossed paths at Fort Dix in 1967, where as a trainee I searched you out as a result of the urgings of a Rabbi Macy Gordon. Interesting how the Jewish world is such a close world. I've known Rabbi Gordon since I was a student in yeshiva. After I left the army, we next crossed paths in Liberty. Does the name Stuart Rothschild ring a bell? A couple of Sunday mornings ago, I ran into an Ari Greenspan. It was funny because the Ari I remember was a little knee-high schlepper. I couldn't believe that this big Ari was getting married. Mazel tov to you all. Is the Dina Greenspan, now Lehrman of NCSY fame, also yours? I'm really glad that your son's apartment hunting brought on this bit of nostalgia, which caused me to write this note. I'd really like to catch up on the intervening years, etc. Okay, that was the letter I received from him. Yeah, isn't that interesting? I know that Ari treats his daughter. Yeah, so you see, just hearing and knowing, hearing occasionally from people whom you've had some influence on, and by the way, he was intended to go to Vietnam. He was a Dati boy. We arranged for him to be stationed at Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. He spent his period of time in the Army in Brooklyn. He was able to observe without any problem. By the way, I didn't get into kashrus in the military, and it's late, and I'm not going to go into it, but I never had a soldier who wanted to observe kashrut that we were not able to work it out for. I never had a soldier, even in Vietnam, who wanted to be Shomer Shabbat that we were not able to work it out for. If there were Orthodox rabbis, it was worked out. At least I can say that almost with 100% certainty. So that's a little bit about my journey and about how this book came into being. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And there's coffee and soda, etc. And if you'd like the book, it's certainly available for 80 shekel. Toda rabah.